What did you say his power level is? It's over 9,000! 9,000?! There's no way that can be right! It can't!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mono Story. My name is John and today we're going to be talking about power scaling and why it is bad in anime and manga. So let's power up and get right into it.
強くなんかなくったって一緒にいてほしい仲間がいるから力いっぱい戦う方法を考えた。いや、セカンド。
The general premise of power scaling is quite easy to understand. It's where a character just naturally gets stronger through either training or compromise. So they are harmed and then their ability kicks in where they are now stronger. And this we'll see either through an increase in their power level or a new ability that they're able to utilize. And this is generally done by writers to improve character development and create bigger fights. A clear example of this would be anything to do with Super Saiyan, so Goku going from Super Saiyan 1 to 2, then 3, or in another example would be Luffy and his gear stages, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that sort of power scaling. You could even look at Naruto, for example, and him going to get his Rasengan and then his Sage forms as an example of what is power scaling. Now, the general benefits of power scaling are quite easy to understand. You get a cool new form and you get a cool new ability. So no one can tell me that when you saw Luffy's Gear 5 for the first time, you weren't shocked and amazed. Or when versing Frieza, Goku goes to Super Saiyan and everyone's like, wow, this is amazing. And goddamn right, it is amazing. It's really cool stuff. Like, power scaling is an amazing thing in its base form of its looks and its appeal to the reader and the audience. It makes things awesome. And no one can tell me that when you saw Naruto first use his Rasengan, that was not a cool as event. Do not tell me that that is not cool. That being said, power scaling is actually not a benefit but a weakness to a story. The first reason easily being you need to consistently be making stronger enemies, and these enemies can only be beaten by that character with that sort of power scaling, generally the main character. So Luffy was only going to be the only person who could beat Katakuri. No one could beat Katakuri but Luffy. Kaido, same thing. Doesn't matter whether Law was fighting Kaido, doesn't matter whether Zoro was fighting Kaido when he stopped the attack. He was still going to be beaten by Luffy, and he still lost. Luffy still lost twice, and he needed to get power scaled up the max. So no one else was going to be able to beat Kaido. Again, same thing with Naruto. Pain fight. No one's beaten Pain but Naruto, because he's the only one that's been powered up enough to get to that level. So anyone that versed anyone similar to Pain was not going to get through, clearly. And the issue I have with this is that characters that are the enemy need to keep getting bigger and bigger and bolder and bolder. You need to have these cool as moves, but the other characters can't deal with it. So they're being just wasted, left to do nothing. Like, you ask yourself, what has Usopp done in One Piece for the past couple of chapters or past couple of arcs? Same as maybe even not Nami. Nami's been doing real good stuff. But we're talking Chopper. Chopper in Wano had to get a arc made just for him, an actual attack with the disease, and he needed to cure it just so that we could use him for something other than fighting. Because let's be honest, Oda took away one of his best forms and now it's given him like slop forms, let's be honest. Even in the case of Jujutsu Kaisen, I mean, at some point Sukuna has to stop powering up. I mean, the show's been finished now, but at some point it was like he's going to just get crazy and crazy. Like, who's going to be able to deal with him other than Yuji? Like, come on. And even Yuji was struggling with that, you know? So these things get out of hand very quickly, and it's hard for a writer to keep writing those sorts of good stories when all you have is a really strong character that no one else can even stand up to other than the main character. It lowers the other characters, lowers their abilities, makes them feel weaker, and they get less character development. Like going back to One Piece, Usopp in the Dressrosa arc, when he got observation haki and was able to stop Sugar, was one of the best moments I think of that arc, and he became God Usopp. When's that going to happen again? I don't know, because he's doing nothing else, because he's been stuck with having to deal with being in the shadow of Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji being power scaled up to the max. Even Nami's been getting more power scaling than he is. And this is why I think power scaling is just not a good system. You could even take into consideration Dragon Ball with Goku. Once Goku reached Super Saiyan 3 against Majin Buu, who's going to deal with Majin Buu other than Goku? What, you're thinking Vegeta's the only other character? Everyone else? Pointless. Can't do anything. So anyone that versus Majin Buu now is just going to be dead. Just done.
You're going to love this. Trust me. What you're seeing now is my normal state. This is a Super Saiyan.
So then what can you do, right? If power scaling isn't the answer, then how do you have good fights and consistent stories without that need to improve your character to the 10th, 100th level compared to everyone else? And it's very simple. It is not hard to do. Just make good characters fighting each other. What do I mean by that? Make characters use their intelligence with their abilities in tandem with each other. So you, for example, could look at a very good story like JoJo. JoJo does not use power scaling till the end of the story. So power scaling will not show up in JoJo till you get to the world, all right? And you're talking about JoJo being able to stop time like Theo. Or you're talking about Golden Experience Requiem versus King Crimson, which is at the end of the story. So you have more time to develop your characters, understand their abilities, see how they use them, rather than just getting them powered up to this level of unforsaken, unfathomable abilities that you yourself could never see in a reality. One of my favorite fights in JoJo is actually from part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable, where Rohan Kishibe has to deal with this stand on his back, and that is more intense than some of these power scaling fights because he's trying to deal with something that he cannot fight, and it's something that he needs to deal with, because if anyone looks at his back, he's done, he's gone. And that requires a lot more intelligence, thinking, situational awareness, struggles, and at the end, when he does defeat the stand, we as the viewer are like, yes, it's done, he's won. And so those sorts of fights can be done in One Piece or Dragon Ball or Naruto, even Bleach. These stories can be real, even in new stuff like Jujutsu Kaisen. I mean, you can look at Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man's a very good example of non-power scaling, but there is good fights because the power does not come from them getting stronger. It comes from them using their abilities, the one that they have, with situational awareness and understanding. And when they fight, they're acting in a way where they attack certain parts of the body or they try to block and defend against their other attacks. That is what makes Chainsaw Man and non-power scaling shows a little, if not even better than power scaling shows, because they do not rely on that power scaling to entice the viewer and audience. They have to get a way for people to watch their shows without getting a cheap knockoff, which is power scaling. I will say though, when they do work with their teammates or friends in a fight, we do not need friendship. I'm looking at you, Fairy Tail. We do not need friendship is the way to win this. We can do it with our friends. No, you work together and you win against the enemy. Clear example again, in JoJo, Mr. and Jono defeating stuff like White Album and Green Day. They're not going, they're going, friend power, let's do this. They're like, let's get rid of this enemy stand and let's get to our destination. Yeah, that's right, Fairy Tail. I took a shot at you and I'm going to do it every time I have the chance. Friendship is the way to win. Yeah. Good story, maybe, but not a good fighting way to think that friendship is the only way to win. But that's my take. That's not for power scaling. That's just my gripe on friendship being the way to win, which is not a good way to win. So that's my take on power scaling. I don't think it's necessary in a show, and I think it's very bad for any anime or manga. And I think that mangaka and anime producers should look at other ways when they write their stories, that they do not use these flashy, cheap knockoff ways to entice your audience. They use hard-hitting, factual ways of fighting that will improve audience retention and improve the way that viewers watch shows and have a good story. Because character development does not come from you powering up. It comes from you being able to use your abilities, and after you've used them, you go, wow, I can finally do this. I can beat people. I can win with my own self. And I think that is where power scaling will always be bad. It looks cool. I'm not going to lie. I would love to see Super Saiyan, go to 4 again and blue and with Kaioken. That's amazing. You could also talk about whenever Ichigo says, Bankai, and you're going like, damn, that's the stuff, man. That's the stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just our pictures. It isn't real good story writing. So I think power scaling will always be bad in stories, whether it be anime or manga. But that's my opinion. If you have the same opinion, please write down in the comments. But if you differ from my opinion, please, again, tell me in the comments. If you haven't already liked, subscribe, and press the bell button, please do so. And I will see you on another Mono Story.